Kirk, serving as a neutral representative between two warring nations, found himself in a difficult position. Unfortunately, contrary to his intentions, a gift, which was a fragment of an ancient weapon, infuriated the opposing side. Not only did he fail to achieve a peace agreement between the two nations, but he was also attacked by them. Fortunately, the crew managed to teleport him in time, allowing Kirk to avoid the crisis, and Spock subsequently secured the weapon fragment. Later, the USS Enterprise arrived at a massive space station resembling a transparent snowflake glass orb, quietly stationed in deep space. This space station, known as Yorktown, boasted the most advanced technology, with numerous interwoven tracks accommodating different civilizations, and spaceships and floating rails reflecting its prosperity. Before the crew of the Enterprise had a chance to rest, Yorktown received a distress signal from a woman explaining that their spaceship, originally on a mission within a nebula, had crashed on a nearby planet, and only she had escaped in a lifeboat. The Enterprise quickly set off on a rescue mission with the woman. Soon, they passed through the nebula to the planet Ultimate, but Chekhov suddenly detected unidentified ships interfering with the Enterprise. Realizing the danger, Kirk quickly raised the shields and launched an attack. But the enemy's ships dispersed like bees. They used the small ship's advantage to dismantle the Enterprise's warp engines. The massive Enterprise, amidst a swarm of smaller ships, was like a lamb to the slaughter, utterly defenseless. The small ships then breached the hull of the Enterprise, and the enemies began boarding and clearing out the crew. With more advanced weapons, the Enterprise was quickly overrun, and the enemy leader, Krall, boarded the starship, aiming for the ancient weapon fragment. Seeing this, Kirk quickly attacked Krall and his group. Meanwhile, Scotty initiated the impulse engine of a butterfly-shaped ship, causing momentary weightlessness inside, allowing Kirk to grab the weapon fragment and quickly escape. The saucer section of the Enterprise then attempted to escape into the nebula to shake off the small ships, but they regrouped and pierced the Enterprise like blades. Seeing the ship collapsing, Kirk had no choice but to order everyone to abandon ship, but the enemy still pursued the crew, capturing the escape pods in space. Eventually, the butterfly section of the Enterprise broke through the atmosphere and silently crashed on the planet's surface. The successfully escaped Kirk, furious, pointed his gun at the woman who had sent the distress signal. Under duress, the woman revealed her plight, explaining that to save her own crew, she had to strike a deal with Krall. Krall promised her safety for her crew in exchange for luring the Enterprise. But Kirk did not fully trust this woman. He pretended to go with Chekhov to retrieve the hidden weapon fragment in the saucer section, essentially to test the woman. Predictably, she immediately turned hostile, attempting to reclaim the weapon fragment. Fortunately, Chekhov had been lying in wait and successfully subdued her. But just then, the enemy reappeared, and after a fierce chase, they had to activate the thrusters, using the saucer section's flip to eliminate all the enemies. On another front, the successfully escaped Scotty was targeted by several aliens, but at the critical moment, a young girl suddenly appeared and saved him. She also informed Scotty that Krall had been searching for a deadly weapon, and she, along with the men who had just attacked, were survivors of ships that Krall had previously brought down. The girl, named Jayla, struck a deal with Scotty. She would help him find his crew if he would repair her ship to escape the planet. However, Scotty was shocked to discover that the ship was actually the USS Franklin, a Starfleet vessel from the 2160s. Meanwhile, the captured Enterprise crew was actively trying to escape. Sulu and Uhura used Jinsted's highly corrosive snot to open their cell door and escape. After they successfully sent a distress signal, they discovered that Krall had accessed Yorktown's database and obtained all information about the Starfleet. But then, the enemy suddenly appeared, bringing Uhura and Sulu before Krall. It turned out that Krall had intentionally allowed them to send the distress signal, aiming to lure Yorktown's armed forces here and then launch an attack on Yorktown. Furthermore, they discovered that Krall had been absorbing the life force of others to replenish his own energy, and he quickly drained two Enterprise crew members. Elsewhere, Jayla and Scotty were repairing the ship, but Jayla's trap was triggered. They went to check and found that Kirk and Chekhov had fallen into the trap. Jayla quickly released them after Scotty's explanation. Then, Scotty took Kirk and Chekhov to the Franklin, a starship that had disappeared in the 2260s. Although they did not know why the Franklin was there, Scotty assured them that the ship could be repaired and ready to fly soon. At that moment, Chekhov received a signal from McCoy. It turned out that McCoy and Spock had not been captured by the enemy, but Spock had sustained an abdominal injury, slowing their progress and soon to be discovered by the enemy. Fortunately, Scotty cleverly used a cargo transport method to beam them back to the Franklin, where McCoy quickly treated Spock's injuries with limited medical supplies. To rescue the trapped crew, they formulated a detailed rescue plan. Since Jayla knew the location of Krall's base, Kirk immediately headed there with her. Meanwhile, Krall, unable to find the weapon fragment, was furious and prepared to drain Sulu's life force. Seeing the situation as critical, a crew member couldn't help but stand up. It turned out that Kirk had hidden the weapon fragment behind his head, and Krall, having obtained the fragment, proudly introduced the weapon to everyone. Since the weapon had the power to destroy worlds, the ancients had split it into two and cast it into space. Now that Krall had successfully combined them, he used a crew member as a test subject to demonstrate the weapon's destructive power. At this moment, Kirk rode a motorcycle into Krall's base, using Jayla's holographic technology to continuously distract the enemies, while Jayla led McCoy and Spock to rescue the Enterprise crew. Although the crew was quickly transported back to the Franklin, Krall and his minions prepared to depart, and a dense swarm of bee-like ships rushed towards Yorktown. As Yorktown was about to fall into crisis and the old Franklin was unable to launch within the atmosphere, Kirk decided to use inertia to gain speed for the Franklin. As the engine started, the ship quickly fell off a cliff. Just as the Franklin was about to crash, it reached the necessary speed for takeoff and soared into the sky, leaving the planet. At the same time, Krall's ship had passed through the nebula and begun destroying Yorktown's defense weapons. Although Kirk and his team received a distress signal, the old ship was no match for Krall's swarm of ships. At a critical moment, Spock thought of a way to disrupt the ship's communication. Spa and McCoy hijacked an enemy ship. Through research, they discovered that all small ships shared a neural network. By disrupting this network, all ships would lose control. To catch them off guard, Scott decided to use high-frequency rock music to disrupt the neural network. As thousands of ships surged towards the tiny Franklin like a tidal wave, the blaring music turned the ships into fireworks in space. With Yorktown also broadcasting at the same time, nearly all ships were destroyed, but Krall's ship still entered Yorktown. Seeing this, Kirk ordered the Franklin to follow and leap out of the water, forming a wall. Krall's ship crashed harshly against the hull, and to be safe, Kirk went to check and found crew members who had been drained dry, making him realize that Krall might still be alive. At that moment, Uhura, through previous recordings, discovered that the captain of the Franklin, Edison, was actually Krall. They then learned from his logs that Krall's starship had been abandoned by the Federation on the planet, but over time, he had mastered a technology to extend life. He had also discovered unmanned mining ships left by aliens on the planet. Thus, Krall began planning his revenge against the Starfleet. Meanwhile, Krall had climbed into the air circulation system, preparing to release the deadly weapon. Fortunately, Kirk arrived in time, and the two immediately fought fiercely. During the struggle, they burst through the glass and flew out. However, Krall, unwilling to give up, used gravitational flow to return to the air circulation system and successfully released the weapon. Seeing this, Kirk quickly went to activate the hatch to expel the deadly weapon into space. But at that moment, Krall attempted a sneak attack. Kirk kicked him into the black matter and quickly expelled him into outer space, turning the hateful Krall into ash, while Kirk was caught by Spock in a critical moment, narrowly escaping disaster. Finally, Jayla received an acceptance letter from Starfleet Academy, and Spock opened a keepsake from the older Spock, which contained a photo of the Enterprise crew from another universe, a family that had once struggled together. The new Enterprise also began reconstruction, ready to continue the unfinished journey of exploration with all its crew members.